This video is sponsored by Aura. Hey, what's going on? My name is Michael. You guys are watching IDB. And in this video, I want to spend some time and talk about Apple's next big software update, iOS 17. We're actually closer than you might think to iOS 17 beta coming out. And in the last few days, we've had a few reports here and there talking about some of the details that we can expect from iOS 17. And I also want to throw in this video some of my own requests for Apple's next software update. So let's go ahead, roll the intro, and let's jump in. All right, so iOS 17. The first thing I want to touch on is just when can we expect it to get released. Apple always previews their latest software at the Worldwide Developer Conference, which always happens in June. So if we look at our calendar, it could either happen on the week of June 5th or the week of June 12th. And the conference itself is usually on a Monday, even though the conference itself lasts about a week for the developers in California. It would be kind of cool, just as a side note, if it happened on June 5th, because that is actually my birthday. In terms of what we can expect from iOS 17, I honestly think that the main focus this year should be stability, and I'll show you a few examples of why I'm saying this. I have gathered some screenshots on the web and also from just my own usage on my iPhone. And iOS 16 is pretty buggy, even though we are this far into iOS 16. At this point, Apple's working on iOS 16.4. So there really isn't any excuse for it to be as buggy as it is, but it really is. It really doesn't feel that stable. And that's to be expected because iOS 17 was a pretty big software update. Like, it completely overhauled the lock screen, and they added so many big features that were requested for so long, such as haptic feedback on the keyboard and adding the battery percentage up into your battery icon. I mean, those themselves aren't really that big, but you know what I mean. iOS 16 was a pretty substantial upgrade. If you look at some of the screenshots I have here, you can see what I mean when I say that iOS 16 isn't stable. You can see we have some UI glitches here on the music player. This is one I experience almost every single day with the square notifications. It goes away after about half a second, but it does definitely get very annoying. Here is another one with sort of a rotation bug where the status bar is in the wrong orientation. I've also experienced this one where the Wi-Fi toggle in Control Center is just completely blank, even though I have a bunch of Wi-Fi networks around me. This one I haven't experienced, but I saw this screenshot from Reddit, so some user was experiencing completely blank notifications on their lock screen. This one is in the app switcher, and I have experienced this, however, not as frequently as some other users have. Whenever I'm switching between applications, every now and then I might have this really weird UI glitch where half of the card is invisible, as you can see in this screenshot. Here is another weird UI glitch where some of the layering on the lock screen is a little bit off. And again, here is another weird UI glitch in multitasking where the card has just completely disappeared. And here is another one where it looks like some of the text on the lock screen is overlaying with some other text, and it just looks really weird. This does not look like polished software to me. The final one here is another one with the UI on the lock screen, how it's just kind of overlaid in a weird way. So that was a lot of examples, I know, but iOS 16 in my usage just doesn't feel that stable. A lot of those that I showed you, they weren't the biggest deal, like they're pretty small UI type bugs, but you really expect more of a level of polish from Apple. So that's why I'm hoping that iOS 17 focuses a lot on stability. You may remember back when iOS 12 came out, the first thing that they said about iOS 12 is that they were doubling down on performance. And I really hope that that is the case for iOS 17, because as you were able to see in the last few minutes of all of these examples, iOS 16 is pretty far from being stable. And to add on top of my theory of iOS 17 not being a big release, we have had a bunch of leaks from reputable sources saying that Apple is putting a lot of focus into their new AR/VR headset software, and that iOS 17 is not going to be the main focus of the event. Obviously, if Apple is unveiling a completely new piece of hardware which runs completely unique software, they're not going to be focusing on iOS 17 at this event. And honestly, I think that's what iOS needs, just because iOS 16 itself was such a big update. If Apple is focusing more on their new piece of hardware, iOS 17 should be a pretty small update. And I also have a list I've compiled myself of some requested features that I would love to see in iOS 17. And when I was crafting this list, I was pretty mindful about iOS 17 not being a huge release. So in my list of requested features, you're not going to see any huge outlandish requests, just really small features that I would love to see added to iOS 17. But before we get into that, a quick word from our sponsor. I want to take a quick minute to discuss today's sponsor, Aura. Did you know that in 2021, the total amount lost to digital crime was 6.9 billion? Yeah, that's billion with a B. It really is quite staggering. These days, it is so important to protect your data on the web, and Aura is the smart, simple way to stay safe online. Aura offers all-in-one digital safety for the entire family across all devices. Aura offers proactive protection for your assets, your identity, your family, and technology all in one easy-to-use application. Aura will alert you if your credit profile has been compromised. They can protect your kids from harmful websites online. They offer a VPN so you can browse anonymously. And probably the coolest feature is they will send you an alert if your social security number is detected anywhere on the dark web. Aura offers a 60-day money-back guarantee and also a no-strings-attached free trial. It's time to completely rethink your security online, so use our link in the description. That's aura.com/IDB. And thanks again to Aura for sponsoring us on YouTube. Now let's get back to the video. All right, so I have a list of 7 requested features that I would love to see in iOS 17. Before I jump into it, I want you to head into the comments right now and tell me what is one feature that you would love to see in Apple's next update. For me, number 1 is typing indicators in group chats. I feel like iMessage compared to the competition has kind of fallen behind a little bit, and a whole bunch of other messaging applications have these features. When I'm in a group chat, I would love to have the option to see if somebody in that group chat is typing. You can only do this in iMessage when you are chatting with someone one-on-one, but as soon as you go into a group chat, you don't get the typing indicator and you don't even get to see if your message was delivered. So in iOS 17, it'd be really nice if when I send a message into the group chat, I'm able to see if it was delivered to one person or 2 people or everybody. And also when someone is typing, maybe we could get that little typing indicator with their profile picture next to it. That would be a really nice feature they could add. Next up at number 2 is I would love Apple to completely redesign the Mail app and the Calendar app. This was one of my requested features last year, and I feel like if I picked up an iPhone that's running maybe iOS 8 or iOS 9, the Mail app and the Calendar app would look pretty much the exact same. Apple hasn't touched these applications in so long, and when you compare these apps to something like Apple Music, for example, they just feel so outdated. Apple Music is nice and fresh and it has some really cool animations and it's smooth. And then you go and you use the Mail app and the Calendar app, and they just feel like Apple has completely forgotten about them and they haven't really put any time and effort into crafting a really nice application. So if Apple could overhaul some of the stock applications, that would be greatly appreciated. Next up at number 3, this one is pretty simple, but if Apple added this in iOS 17, I would be very happy. And it is better access to the app library. I think the app library itself is a good idea, and Apple just kind of copied it from Android. I'm glad they did that because we definitely needed a cohesive area where all of our applications live. However, it is kind of annoying to swipe between all of your pages just to get to the app library on the last page. I feel like Apple could implement the app library much better in iOS, and an idea that I have is maybe you could swipe up from the dock at the bottom of your screen to access the app library. So however they choose to implement this in iOS 17, better, faster access to my app library would be amazing. Number 4, this one is for the iPhone 14 Pro. I would love to see more use cases for the dynamic island, especially for notifications, because when you have the island taking up so much space at the top of your screen, and then you have a notification come right over top of the island, and then when it's sitting on your screen for about 5 seconds, it's kind of just sitting right below the island, and it feels like there's a lot of dead space. When you get a phone call on the 14 Pro, it comes out of the island, and on the 120 hertz display, it looks really nice and fluid. But when you get a notification, it feels like it completely ignores the island. So I feel like Apple could extend their uses for the dynamic island and make it a bit more worth it for people that invested in a 14 Pro. Next up at number 5, when I asked you guys on Twitter, it seems like this was the most popular requested feature, but it is to change the controls on the lock screen. These two toggles at the bottom of the lock screen have been the same since iOS 11 when the iPhone X first came out. And the one for the camera is a little bit redundant because you can either swipe from right to left to access your camera, or you can press and hold on the camera toggle. So I would love it if Apple could include the option to change up these toggles on the lock screen. If they did, I think I would still have the flashlight on the bottom left corner just because it is so useful and it's like muscle memory that that's where the flashlight is on my phone, so I'm so used to that. But I think I would change the one in the bottom right to either be Safari or Music, just because I don't need two ways to access my camera. If I can still swipe from right to left to access my camera, I would definitely swap out one of those lock screen toggles. Number 6 and 7 have to do with the lock screen as well. However, these are extensions on features that Apple added in iOS 16. The first one is I would just like to have more fonts on the lock screen. I really love how Apple added the option to change the font for your clock on the lock screen in iOS 16. However, we don't really have that many choices in terms of choosing a font. So if Apple could double the choices of fonts that we can choose from, I think that would really make iOS 17 a lot more personalized. And finally, again, for the lock screen, I think this one is pretty realistic. I could definitely see Apple doing this. I would love to have the option to share our lock screens. Because we can now have multiple lock screens on our iPhones and we're sharing them with friends and we're showing everybody our personalized iPhone screen, I think it would be really nice, just like we can on the Apple Watch where we can share our watch faces, maybe on our iPhones we could share our lock screen. It would be really cool if I could press and hold on my lock screen and right next to the customize button, there's a share button and I could airdrop my lock screen to the person sitting next to me, and just like that we could have the exact same lock screen. That would be a really cool idea that they could implement in iOS 17. So that was my list of everything I'd like to see in iOS 17. I think I kept my list pretty conservative. I think that all of the things I listed in this video are definitely things that we could see Apple implement in their next software update. So once again, head down into the comments and tell me what is one thing that you want to see in iOS 17. And if you agree with anything I said in this video, also tell me in the comments down below as well. That's going to do it for this video. Make sure to subscribe as we are going to have iOS 17 coverage on day 1 as soon as it comes out. So make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications for our channel. Thanks again to Aura for sponsoring us. My name is Michael with IDB, and I'll see you next time.